The problem that the Conservatives have is that a lot of voters think that if the government isn't spending more money on their particular issue, it's out of meanness. It's out of sheer lack
Mm-hmm.
of generosity. It's not because money is limited. Somehow it could all easily be got from the rich or from oil companies or something. And there is austerity is a sadistic political choice. It's not like a family budget that has to remain within bounds. Now, the only way I think that people are going to be jogged out of that illusion is when they see a Labour government running out of money, which I think is very likely to happen during this term, because we are still, I mean, we're 3 years on from the lockdown. The financial crisis is a distant memory, and we are still running a massive deficit with absolutely no plan to bring spending back to where it was in February of 2020 before the lockdowns, right? So this is what I mean by a parallel with the 70s. There was a Tory government that spent too much, followed by a Labour government that then ran out of money. And that
Mm-hmm.
created the political scenario where Thatcherism was possible, because people understood then that this was about having to live within our means. Now, some countries in Europe have done that more recently. Because of the euro crisis, Ireland and Greece are two outstanding examples of countries that just, in order to meet payroll, had to cut spending and did, and have now both done extremely well since. I think something similar is likely to happen. It may even be, and this really would be the ultimate victory for the wider Conservative movement. Sorry to answer your question in such a long-winded way. It may
That's
even
fine.
be that that process of restoring order and sanity to our public finances has to begin under a Labour government, because their hand is forced by international events. So we tend to think in this country, because particularly people of my age who grew up under Thatcher, because we have that experience in the 80s, we tend to think that the reform comes from a successful, radical, free market conservative government that is prepared to take on all comers and do brave things. Actually, if we look at other Anglosphere countries, very often the reform begins on the left. Roger Douglas in New Zealand, Paul Martin in Canada, arguably even Bill Clinton in some ways in the US in terms of welfare reform and so on. So it is not impossible. I wouldn't rule out the possibility. He doesn't want to do this. He'll be dragged there kicking and screaming. But if the bond markets turn on the Labour government, if the penny finally drops that Britain is not bringing its spending down and isn't doing anything to increase growth, it is possible that welfare reform of our useless healthcare system will have to start under these guys.
Yeah, I mean, the better example in America than Clinton, although Clinton's a good example, I would argue, um, is Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
Not a huge fan of Jimmy Carter. I mean, God bless. I've never heard of someone being in hospice this long, but a lot of the deregulatory stuff that we love to tout as Reaganism kind of starts under Jimmy Carter, and of course Reagan then turns it to 11 in all sorts of ways, and all praise and honor on the Gipper. But I think you're right. You often see these things that out of necessity is forced upon the party that doesn't want to do it, and that gives it a legitimacy that then the party that does want to do it can run with.
Right. It opens the
To me,
door.
it's a
It
little bit of
opens the
a
door, and that makes all the difference. It
right.
allows the other guy then to say, "Look, this isn't scary." Exactly that.
Which is why, in some ways, I feel I'm getting so exhausted hearing about how. And I understand that part of the reason why people are saying it is to butter Joe Biden up to get him off the stage. But I'm constantly hearing how he had the most successful first-term presidency of any American president in modern memory, and all this kind of stuff. And my wife and I are constantly looking around saying, "What are you talking about?" But that said, I think one of the great wastes of his presidency is that he was elected with his mandate to be normal and put America back on a normal path, and instead he got he got buffeted by the hard left and did all sorts of things that I think set him up for the precarious situation that he's in now.